Hello Katawantok, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific, ni Nemblumi Koroe Hawkins. Coming up.
The first fatality has happened as a result of a clash between young rioters and militias.
Tensions continue to escalate in New Caledonia as the first casualty of the unrest has been confirmed. Papua New Guinea has agreed to a Bougainville Government request for a moderator to be brought in to solve an impasse over the autonomous region's independence aspirations. And later on,
the legacy and the history of our double canoe, Na Waqa Drua.
We talked to some craftsmen who have set out to build a legendary giant Fijian canoe. But before we get into all that, a brief news update from Fiji. The country's National Disaster Management Office is evacuating residents in central Fiji affected by flooding as a result of heavy rains overnight on Tuesday. Several roads were underwater and were closed as of Wednesday morning. Tiana Haxton reports.
The disaster office is working with authorities to ensure the safety of affected communities. Director Vasiti Soko says local police and fire rescue services have been deployed.
Homes are flooded, so priority for government right now is to move people to the evacuation centre, clear roads so that our first responders can reach those communities that are affected and ensure safe evacuations of general public.
Ms. Soko says the flooding took many people by surprise and reports began coming in as villagers woke up to their homes being inundated. With more rain expected over the next 48 hours, authorities are urging coastal residents to flee to higher ground as soon as possible.
So the advice now to general public is evacuate, but evacuate when it is safe to do so because of flooding that's currently being experienced in real time in most of our coastal communities within Serua to Nambotini.
Fiji's Met Service forecasts a trough of low pressure, with clouds and showers will continue to affect the country until Friday.
The first casualty of the unrest in New Caledonia has been confirmed as tensions continue to escalate in the French territory. Violence broke out on Monday night following protests by Kanak pro-independence supporters against a proposed bill which would enable thousands more non-Indigenous people to vote in local elections in New Caledonia. The French High Commissioner to New Caledonia has confirmed the person who died was a civilian. Louis Lefranc has begged protesters to stop the revolt and called for calm. More than 130 people have been arrested and another overnight curfew has been announced for overnight Wednesday. There are also fears the progress of controversial legislation through the French National Assembly overnight could further inflame the situation in Noumea. Patrick Declocha on our French Pacific desk has been following developments and joins me now. Kia ora, Patrick, what's the latest we know?
Well, obviously, Koroy, last night the French National Assembly has finally voted for this constitutional amendment that would modify the conditions of eligibility for voters in local elections in New Caledonia. Even though the process is not completed, it could have triggered more violence from New Caledonia on the ground. And what the French commissioner has just announced is that they are now in the position to confirm that the first dead fatality has happened as a result of apparently a clash between the young rioters, Kanak pro-independence, who were armed, and a new phenomenon in New Caledonia, which is the formation of militias from those people on the other side who are trying to defend themselves. The problem in New Caledonia is that the number of people in possession of firearms is pretty high. Officially, the gun permits are for hunting purposes. That means also the weapons are of high caliber for large game. And this is exactly what happened 40 years ago, in the sense that when people in New Caledonia start to take the guns, it can become very destructive.
This started, just backtracking a bit, this started with
seemingly orderly, peaceful protests for this legislation, this proposed bill that you mentioned that's making its way through the French lawmaking process. Do we know what sparked it? Do we know what set off the violence?
All we can say now is that from all sides, for the last 20 or 48 hours, all the political parties, pro-independence or pro-French, have all called for calm. We know already that the group that was supposed to be coordinating all these actions, the CCAT, the Field Action Coordinating Committee, was created, or rather revived, by one of the components of the umbrella FLNKS, and the component was Union Caledonian. They set up this group. Even this group now is saying, its leader has been saying yesterday that he had never actually instructed his people to especially loot in the shops. But there's a general feeling now that these guys, these young people mostly, are out of control. Nobody can. Somebody has actually said, the lady mayor of Nouméa has said yesterday in a press conference that they have created a monster and nobody knows where this monster is going to go next. Speaking to people in New Caledonia yesterday, a lot of people are saying it took them by surprise. It was something that happened suddenly. But we, through your reporting and the stories you've been covering, this has been building up to this for months, right? Yes, it has been building up for months, because this organization I was referring to earlier has set a very well-planned schedule of demonstrations and marches, and they have their own system of like a cyclone, a magnitude category. They said we started with category 1 and then 2. Not so long ago, just a few days ago, I think on Sunday, they said we have now reached 2.5. And well, now we see the results of what a phenomenon of magnitude 2.5 can look like. Some reports from the ground we're getting are that police are overwhelmed. Reinforcements have arrived from France, but still curfew last night was not able to contain more violence. What's likely to happen now? Is there any more escalation in terms of the security aspect? Well, if we speak about just last night, apparently curfew or no curfew didn't really make any difference, because the buildings and businesses have continued to burn. There are more now burnings. Last night, a very famous sports supermarket has completely been burned to the ground. There are other places where actually what the description was like this morning in Nouméa is that it looked like a cloudy day. It was not clouds. It was smoke. Is there any call for a state of emergency? We know there's military in New Caledonia. Are they being called out to help? Well, at least one person has publicized actually the letter she has sent to the French president, and this is the president of the southern province where Nouméa is located, Mrs. Sonia Bakes. She's actually called the president to, just like you said, rely more on the military, who would come to back up the police and gendarmes to regain control of the situation while it's still possible. She's actually openly talking about a state of civil war. Yes. The scenes are quite bleak looking at all of the pictures and the footage. You mentioned it being unraveling in sort of the way that it has historically. Am I right in saying that a point of difference this time, though, is that as you mentioned, the political leaders on both sides are not engaged in this, but are calling for calm and calling for de-escalation? They are calling for calm now, but not all of them, but some of them have actually created the conditions for this situation that we have now.
Papua New Guinea has agreed to a Bougainville Government request for a moderator to be brought in to solve an impasse as the autonomous region seeks independence. Bougainville wanted a working moderator to resolve a dispute over how their referendum on independence would be tabled in the PNG Parliament. Port Moresby says an absolute majority of the 118 MPs would need to support the tabling. But Bougainville's Minister for Implementation of Independence, Ezekiel Massat, who spoke with Don Wiseman, believes it should be a simple parliamentary majority.
The area of impasse was specifically on the voting majority threshold. There's also an issue of the joint consultative report that needs to go into Parliament. Those are probably the main areas that the moderator would be looking at.
Do you know who you might seek to do the job?
Not at the moment, but the technical officials are currently meeting. Part of their responsibility is to not only work on the terms of reference, but put forward suggestions on possible candidates from which myself and Minister Makiba will then make our representations to our government.
This process inevitably is going to delay the tabling of the referendum results further, isn't it? Because you've got to go through these other processes before you get to that stage. So is that a worry?
Well, on our side, Bougainville has always wanted quick tabling of the referendum result. Now, when the national government decided to hasten the process, we made it clear that there are some legal prerequisites. The raw referendum results cannot go into Parliament without the joint consultative report, which would have provided the details to the raw result. And therefore, the current JSB resolution, I think, allows the two sides, while I don't think there will be a delay. I mean, we've already been delayed because the Era Koni asked for the ratification in 2023. But going forward, I think what the current JSB resolution does is put everybody back on track and comply with some of the legal prerequisites before all these matters are then tabled on the floor of the National Parliament.
Yes, and the Prime Minister, Mr Marape, seemed very supportive of the process in the statements he's made. You'd welcome that.
I do welcome the commentaries and the attitude, the positions of the Prime Minister, but we are concerned that this is a matter that will be decided on by the 118 members of the floor of the House, and therefore we've been strong on the moderator, also assisting in the bipartisan committee work when members can be given the resources and information when they make the critical decisions later on down the line.
All right, look, Parliament is due to resume later this month. Do you think you're going to get the tabling into that session?
No, that won't be possible because the moderator needs to be appointed. The joint consultative report needs to be crafted. The terms of reference for the moderator needs to be worked on. I don't anticipate the referendum results to go in these May sittings. But what I hope will happen is for the Minister for Bougainville Affairs to now formally announce the agreed positions on the bipartisan committee and where this issue goes from here on.
Yes, you could possibly be looking at this not being tabled until 2025, couldn't you?
I'm not very keen on the issue going past 2024.
Yes, but you could potentially run out of time.
I'm not in a position to make that judgment at this time.
Keeping traditional canoe building skills and testing navigation stories told about the giant Fijian Na Waqa Drua, or double-hulled canoe, is driving a Fiji-based group to build the biggest canoe in the world. Measuring over 100 feet in size, the canoe is expected to be ready to launch in November. Na Waqa Drua representative Carson Young and traditional builder-navigator Kayafa Lindua spoke with RNZ Pacific's Ilyes Satora about the project and what it means to them.
Artisan designer Carson Young is the brains behind the Drua concept and says 4 years of research has gone into the final design. He says keeping traditional Fijian canoe building and navigational skills alive was what inspired the group to take up the project.
We were lamenting A lot of the skills that we've acquired over the years wasn't really put to use. So, the idea of building something for ourselves was born at that very moment. The reason we build in something over 100 feet is to put to the test the performance of these vessels.
Yang says it is important they honor the legacy of those who had built Fijian canoes in the past.
We're serious about creating a Drua renaissance in Fiji, and so we see this being a huge part of it, gathering momentum amongst traditional builders, sailors here in Fiji. So these are really exciting for us, but we find that it's important that we honor the legacy and history of these families.
Once completed, the full-size Waqa Drua will be the biggest of its kind to be built in the last 180 years.
Just to put things into perspective, no living person has ever seen one or built one. A real-size Tambete class Waqa Drua, not in the last 150, 180 years.
Kayafalendua comes from a long line of traditional canoe builders in Laos and says the Waqa Drua will be different.
I have navigated on Utanyalo, her expeditions around the Pacific right up to the US. But it's nothing compared to our Drua. The way that these vessels are sailed, the way that they are being handled out there in the ocean is totally different.
Lendua says many young people in Fiji are asking where the Fijian Drua rugby team got its name from, which is something that has also inspired him to work on the project.
Our young generations are starting to ask, what exactly is that rugby team named after? So for me, coming from a canoe building family, I know and I understand the importance of maintaining the legacy and the history of our double hull canoe, Drua.
The Na Waqa Drua group have been given a grant award under the Pacific, African, Caribbean and European Union or ACP-EU Cultural and Creative Industries Grant Scheme and are working with the Pacific Community or SPC on the project.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tofa Soifua.